I'm a big fan of AppImages. You guys know that. I love AppImages. Actually, I love snaps and Flatpaks as well. I use all three package formats. And if I open my graphical file manager here and I go into my home directory / applications with a capital A, this is the directory you typically store your AppImages. You can see I've downloaded a number of AppImages here on my system, applications that either work better for me as an app image, or I keep an app image around because I want a specific version of that particular program, or maybe the application isn't in my distributions repositories and the only way I can get that program is with an app image. And one of the things with app images, it's such a really neat package format, but a drawback to it is there's no real command line manager, package manager, command line install program, or anything like that. Well, there are some helper programs out there, but recently I came across this here, the AM Application Manager. Actually, I've been following this for a number of months now. I've actually had it installed on my system at least probably 6 months or so, and I've been pretty impressed with it, and it keeps getting better. Matter of fact, the creator of the AM Application Manager actually posted on my DistroTube subreddit a few days ago to let me know about the application manager AM, and to remind me that really I should actually do a video about it. He's actually got a great video on his GitHub about it, little demonstration. It's basically a quick walkthrough. There's no talking or anything. There's some like heavy metal music in the background, but it's actually a really nice demonstration. But one of the things about AM is that it downloads and installs your app images. It puts them in the appropriate directories. So it typically is going to put the source files themselves in /opt, which is typically where third-party packages tend to go on a Linux system. If you're installing something or building something from source, for example, where do you typically put it? You'll put it in /opt. That's typically what I do. For example, like when I'm building suckless software and things like that, I'll throw it in /opt. So that's where the AM Package Manager will default to putting the source files for these app images, but it will also create a .desktop file and put that in user share applications. That's very important that it creates the .desktop file for you. That means the app image will actually show up in your menu system. So things like dmenu and Rofi, or your menu system of your desktop environment like GNOME, KDE, XFCE, Cinnamon, things like that. So that is really neat that it does that, but it goes a step further. It also creates a link and puts the link in user local bin. And that's really important, especially for dmenu users, because dmenu actually does not read the .desktop files. How does dmenu know what to search for when I run dmenu? Well, it searches for all the binaries on the system. So everything in user bin or user local bin, what the path, basically your shell's path. So having that link in one of those bin directories that are part of the path means that these app images now will show up in dmenu. So let me show you AM in action. I've already got it installed on my system, so let me switch to a new workspace here, and I'm gonna open a terminal, and I'll zoom in a little bit. If I do AM and I'll do -H for help, -H is typically the flag most programs will use for displaying help information. I'm going to scroll up here. Since I zoomed in, I got to scroll up pretty good ways. But you can see there is a few flags and options with AM. There's, a good 15 or 20 flags and options you can use. The most useful ones, or at least the ones I use all the time, I will do AM-L. That is a list that just spits out all of the available app images that you can install. Now it spits out, you can see 1,776 packages. Right now I've got 2 that I've actually installed via AM. And now most of my app images that I showed you earlier, I just downloaded myself. I didn't actually install them via AM, but I could eventually maybe replace all of those app images and have them managed by AM. And right now the only 2 packages that are installed via AM are AM itself, and I think one other dependency that AM needed. Now it's very hard to navigate a list of 1,776 packages, right? So typically what I would do is I would probably pipe AM-L into something like less. That way you can just, hit enter and just go down and just read the list or whatever you want. But they also have this flag here, -Q for query, and you could search for some string. For example, Chromium, I would assume, would be available. Yeah, and I knew it would be available because I know ungoogled Chromium. I actually have the app image for ungoogled Chromium, I believe, stored somewhere. And then you have Chromium itself as well. And then you also have Brave, which is available as an app image. And the reason it came up for that search term is because Chromium is part of its description because it's based on Chromium. So let me actually install something. So I've picked out a couple of programs here that I think, one of them I know I've talked about in the past, and that is Podder, which is a podcasting client. That's Poddr. It's an Electron app. Pretty neat little app if you need a good podcast client for your Linux desktop. I'm going to go ahead and launch it from the terminal, especially the very first time. I like launching these from the terminal just in case there's an error, because some of these app images actually won't work. I've actually installed a number of app images or downloaded a number of app images that just didn't quite work correctly, and sometimes it's nice to actually see the error messages in the terminal. So the very first time, I actually want to launch it from the terminal just in case it doesn't work. I bet it looks like it's going to work just fine since the audio couldn't be loaded. Very first time I ran it, though, I don't know what audio it would have been trying to load here, so I think that was all right. But this is Podder, really nice little application. I'm going to up arrow and I'm going to install Extraterm. Extraterm, nothing really special with it. It's just a terminal emulator. If you've seen one terminal emulator, you've seen them all. It says, why is this not giving me my prompt back? That is weird. My prompt went away. I may have to relaunch the terminal. No, it's working. So this is Extraterm. So I'm getting a tip here. It's kind of annoying. Basically giving you a little tip of how Extraterm works. Looks like it put us in the directory where AM was installing the app image source file. So that's kind of neat. Let me close that and get back to my terminal here. If you want to search for updates, you could do AM-U. And it will say, it says it'll take several minutes, but it's looking for updates for Extraterm and Podder, and it shouldn't find any, right? Because we installed them like 5 minutes ago, right? Maybe not even that long. So it looks like everything is up to date. Now, one really neat piece of functionality that I love with AM is it allows you to actually save a backup of a current working version of a particular app image, and that is done with AM-B. And let's do this for Extraterm. Say I install Extraterm and it's working beautifully, and I don't want an eventual update to a new version that could potentially be buggy or completely broken to ruin my Extraterm, right? And this is not an app image problem. This is just software in general. Sometimes you go from one version of a piece of software to the next, and it's buggy or it's completely broken, and you have to fall back to the previous working version. So let's make a backup. So, for example, in my workflow, I depend on programs like Kdenlive and GIMP. I use them on a daily basis. So it's nice to have a backup to fall back to in case the next version of those programs are broken in some way. So I'm going to do an AM-B Extraterm. It's going to ask, do I wish to back up the current version of Extraterm? Y for yes. And you can see it saved that snapshot. And to restore to a previous version, let's imagine that I just did an update. Extraterm had an update and the new version is broken. Well, I can do AM-O Extraterm. And -O is for overwrite, because we're going to overwrite this current version of Extraterm with the old one, with the backup. Y for yes. It says, please select a snapshot. There is only one snapshot. It says, enter the name. There is no name. That's just a time and date stamp. I don't know if I could have given it a name previously when I made the backup, but since there's no name, I'm just going to hit enter because the name is empty. And it says, restore completed successfully. So we rolled back to the previous version of Extraterm from that snapshot. Now, there was no previous version. The snapshot and the current version of Extraterm were the same version, but you get the idea. And one other useful flag you can do is AM-F for, I think it's find or files. I think it's files. What it does is it shows you some of what is being managed by AM. So it shows you those programs that are currently being managed by the AM application manager, and of course AIM manages itself. It looks like it's also managing some of my AppImages from my home/applications directory. I guess it is managing those, even though I didn't install those via AIM. I guess it knows they exist because that is what is in here. For example, I have a Discord app image that I keep around. I have a Zoom app image I keep around. I don't typically use Discord or Zoom. I haven't used Zoom probably in 2 years or more. I haven't logged into Discord in at least a year or more, but I keep those around because sometimes people ask me to meet them on camera for whatever reason, and they use those particular programs. For me, I prefer Jitsi these days. Also have some games as an app image. It looks like I have Open Arena as an app image. I have Sauerbraten as an app image. Very cool, free and open source first-person shooters. So that is a very quick overview of the AIM package manager. So AIM-H for help will get you the information about AIM. And of course, go to the AIM GitHub for more information. For those of you wondering, when you do the AIM-L for listing all the available app images, and it's like 1,700 app images, where does it get that list? Well, they keep a list online. If you go to portable-linux-apps.github.io, and I'll link that in the show description, you'll get this page, which is all of those applications that are available via AIM. You go to applications list, and here is a graphical table of all of those applications. And if you clicked on one, you can get more information right here on the web, including a screenshot. So basically you can think of this as a GUI web front end to the AIM applications manager. So that is the AIM application manager. Fantastic little program. It's licensed under the GPL, so it is free and open source software. So guys, check it out. Before I go, I need to thank a few special people. I need to thank the producers of this episode. And of course, I'm talking about Gabe, James, Maxim, Homies Too Bald, Matt, Mimit, Mitchell, Paul, Royal, Wes, Armor Dragon, Bash Potato, Chuck, Commander Angry, George, Lee, Marstrom, Methos, Nate, Jan, Paul, Peace, Harsh, and Fedor, Polytech, Realities for Less, Red Prophet, Rolling Tools, Devil, Willie, Zenabit. Man, I ran out of breath there at the end. But these guys, they're my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. Without these guys, this quick look at the AIM application manager would not have been possible. The show is also brought to you by each and every one of these fine ladies and gentlemen. All these names you're seeing on the screen right now, these are all my supporters over on Patreon. I don't have any corporate sponsors. I'm sponsored by you guys, the community. If you like my work, want to see more videos about free and open source software like AIM, subscribe to DistroTube over on Patreon. All right, guys. Peace.